since you hit play on Wife Teacher Mommy, the podcast today, I want to make sure that you know that our free self-love challenge is happening in February 2024 right here on the podcast. The goal of this challenge is to make creating an intentional practice of self-love even easier than ever simply by plugging in your earbuds and listening for about 10 minutes per day. But for the full experience, you're going to want to get the scorecard so you can enter the giveaways, get the daily journal prompts sent to your inbox, and join us for the live wrap-up podcast recording. Yes, you get to join me in the studio and record the podcast together live. It is all free. Go to wifeteachermommy.com/self-love challenge to sign up. Again, it is completely free. You'll get a daily reminder with the free 10-minute coaching each day and your journal prompt, and you will see a transformation over these 14 days. It is not only going to impact your relationship with yourself, but as I'll teach during the challenge, it is going to impact every single other relationship you have in your life, your relationship with other people, your relationship with teaching. That energy is going to impact every single other aspect of your life. So sign up at wifeteachermommy.com/self-love challenge. It's free. Now let's get to the episode. You are listening to episode number 61 of Wife Teacher Mommy, the podcast, the top 7 myths about emergency subplans. I've been helping teachers with their subplans for over 8 years at this point, and I've heard probably every reason under the sun why not to take a day off and why they can't leave emergency subplans. So I'm here to bust all of those myths today, almost like we're on an episode of Mythbusters. So let's go. Glad you're here listening to Wife Teacher Mommy, the podcast today. I'm your host, Kelsey Sorensen, a former elementary teacher turned homeschool mom. Whether you are a teacher or a homeschool parent, my goal at Wife Teacher Mommy is to provide you with both teaching ideas and mindset tools to help you live your absolute best teacher life. Be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. Now let's go. Hey friend, I'm so excited to be here with you today. Welcome to the podcast. If you're new here, I'm so glad you're here and that you've chosen this episode. I hope you'll hit subscribe so you can keep joining us. We've got lots of great stuff here. And if you're back, thanks for coming back and giving me another listen today. I just love being here with you. It's one of my favorite things. And I'm excited to be talking about subplans again. We've had a few episodes about this topic as it's what we've been originally known for is our ready to go subplans. I started creating those in 2014 when I had my first child and I started subbing and realized that teachers needed more support in that area. So there were more complete plans. Then I'd have something to bring with me. But I knew as a teacher what it was like to take a day off and have to leave subplans. So I kind of, having been on both sides, I created the solution. And we've now helped over 70,000 teachers who purchase subplanning resources from us. I've also heard from other teachers. So now while over 70,000 have purchased our resources and found success in taking their days off, making it easier than ever, I've also heard from many other teachers as we've run Facebook ads and Facebook comments and whatnot. And I've heard so many reasons why they're not able to take a day off or use their subplans. Like in their head, it's just not an option. So I'm here today to talk about what all those reasons are and why they, frankly, in my opinion, just aren't true and are actually getting in the way of teachers being able to take a well-deserved day off. So I'm here to help you to be able to take those days off that you earn. It's your PTO. It's part of your job. You should be able to take them. But to bust that myth right away, the part that it's hard, I want to make a quick mention of those subplans I've talked about. Our best subplan deal we've ever offered before is going live right now with some special bonuses and insane pricing. I will link to that in the show notes. And if you're listening later, we'll include a link to the best deal we currently have running on our subplans for you. We are giving early access to you, as we'll let our email and social people know later. Podcast listeners are getting first dibs because you're taking that time to listen to me each week. So if you're a podcast listener, you can save an extra 10% on your purchase with code POD10. Now, let's dive into those 7 myths of why so many teachers believe that they can't take a day off, they can't use their emergency subplans. So, emergency subplan myth number 1, our subplans have to be exactly what we were teaching that day. We cannot deviate from our schedule. So, here is my rebuttal to that. So, you can't know exactly when you're going to be sick or have a family emergency come up. So, if you aren't prepared ahead of time, your kids may end up doing something completely different than you might have been doing anyways. And in fact, it might actually be less useful than if you put some time ahead of time to put together some emergency subplans that are at least still aligned to core standards. They're still like spiral reviewing or learning things that they're supposed to know, rather than just like having some random worksheets or watching a movie or something like that. So if you prepare ahead of time, it can be educational. It does not have to be a throwaway day at all. So that is my thought about myth number 1, because again, these are emergency subplans. Totally fine if like you have a planned day off and you want to be able to like have it match just as closely exactly what you'd be doing that day. That is totally understandable. You could do that. You could write that out that day. It would take you a bit more time though. Like if you're just taking one day off, you want to just use those emergency plans, you can always pick right back up after. Okay, so myth number 2 is I don't have time to do subplans. Now, I want to tell you is that when we say we don't have time for something, it's just that we aren't making time for something. So when we choose one thing, you're choosing not to do something else. So when you choose not to take time to put together your emergency subplans, you might just be choosing for the decision to be easier to just go in sick, right? Or that when you're sick, then you're going to have to throw together those plans instead of being intentional and doing it ahead of time. So the fact is you could make that time if it were a priority to you. You could do that instead of like, one thing I like to think of is when you tell yourself you don't have time for something. I do this myself too. Trust me, I'm not like speaking from this like, oh, I'm perfect point of view or anything. But when I tell myself I don't have time for something, I go and check my screen time on my phone. And if you see a number, like if you see like an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours or however much time you spent on your phone, you know that you could have used some of that time to put together your plans. It doesn't have to take that long. That is one way I like to think about it. Okay. Myth number 3 is it's easier to just go in sick than make my sub plans. This kind of ties into number 2 a little bit, because the fact of the matter is if you don't have sub plans ready ahead of time, it often can feel easier to just go in because you can just show up, you can do it. You don't have to try to write something so somebody else can know what to do because you're choosing in that moment what feels easier. So if you have a sub tub already ready on your desk, imagine this. You have it, it's all ready. You have like a full week of plans there or more that could be pulled at any time, and you're feeling sick. Is it going to be easier to make a quick phone call and be like, hey, I'm sick today. The sub plans are on my desk. Hang up, watch Netflix, sleep, eat some soup? Or to be like, oh, I'm going to get up, get ready, take a shower, go to school, and drag myself through an entire day of school while I'm sick? Which is easier? It's easier to make that phone call, right? So if you have your subplans done, emergency subplans done ahead of time, it is easier to call in sick than it is to go in. The only reason it's easier for many people to go in than to call in sick is because they haven't done that preparation ahead of time. And I know, like, again, this ties back into number 2. Like, you might feel like it's hard to find the time to do anything extra, but it doesn't have to take very long. It really doesn't need to, especially if you use our ready to go sub plans. We even have a free starter kit at the link in our bio with lesson plans and templates. So there's really no reason to not get started. And in fact, you'll save a lot of time versus writing them at the last minute the next time you're sick or your child is puking their guts out. I can so relate to that. So let's talk about emergency subplans myth number 4. I don't need them because I'm teaching online. So I haven't heard this one as much recently, but for a while I was hearing it a lot with COVID. I haven't heard it as much, but for a while it was a very common one. Again, even if you're teaching online, there could always be an emergency. You could always not be able to be there. So guess what? You can have digital subplans set up. So you can have them like for Google Classroom or whatever it is that you use. And we even have some of those available in that free subplanning starter kit that you can check out too, that is linked in the show notes. Now, myth number 5, and you're probably going to wonder why it took me so long to get here. I bet it's the one that's been in the back of your head the entire time. There is a sub shortage. Now, I actually did an intro when we re-aired episode 6 in December, kind of all about this. So the sub shortage, that is a huge biggie all in itself. So when you think of the sub shortage, you might think that you can't take a day off because there's a sub shortage, right? But there are other teachers who are taking their days off, right? Do you believe that there are other teachers who are doing that? Do you see that in your building? I can tell you on my end that we still have teachers purchasing these subplans every day and saying they're using them to take a day off. So we know that other teachers are doing it. And there might be another teacher down the hall who, even if there were like millions of subs out there, they might never call in because they're that person who like calling in and letting anybody down expectations is like, they'll just never do that. So for them, it's not even the sub shortage, it is something else. So because of this, because we see how different people think differently about this, we know that it's not the sub shortage in itself keeping you from taking that day off, but it's your beliefs about it. Maybe you believe that because there's a sub shortage, it's your responsibility to go in anyway. And that might feel noble. It might feel like, oh, I'm helping because there's a situation and it's going to be hard on my team and it's going to be hard on my admin, or maybe they're actually going to be mad or upset about it. But the fact of the matter is you have PTO. It is part of your promised benefits of your job. If you're sick, you're going to be spreading around germs to everybody too. And that's not going to help anyone because then maybe they're going to be more teachers who need to call out. And there's a sub shortage. And then instead of just needing one sub, they need 3. And it's just really something we're telling ourselves in our head that we can't do it. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe that it is not your responsibility to carry that burden of there being a sub shortage. And in fact, I believe if every teacher kept going in because there's a sub shortage and didn't take care of themselves and didn't take their days off, then that's going to just make the problem last even longer. If teachers are actually like, oh, it is not my responsibility, I need to be able to take these days off, then more likely solutions are going to come up. So I don't know, that's just the way that I'm thinking about it. And many of the teachers in our community are thinking about it. So just something to keep in mind with that myth. Okay, so now let's dive into number 6. I can't take a day off because my students need me. Now, there might be students who will have a hard time when you have a sub. That's true. They might not have as great a behavior. It might be a rough day, and there might be some catch up when you get back. But the fact of the matter is that your students will be okay if you take a day off. And if you know ahead of time, you can even prepare them for it. But even if you don't, you can prepare them for when a sub happens. You can tell them, like, at some point, there is going to be a substitute teacher. And when that happens, this is what to expect. And this is how things are going to be a little bit different. And this is how they're going to need to keep things the same. You can also even kind of talk to them and have them build a little bit of empathy for a substitute. You can be like, oh, imagine if you were a sub and you came into the classroom and they were students that you didn't know. How would you want them to act for you? And have them kind of think about it from that perspective. You can also, if there's a student who just has a really hard time, the fact that you're not going to be there, you can talk to them like, hey, you know what? I'm coming back. It's going to be okay. Like, this other teacher who comes in, they're going to be great. You're going to be just fine. And, it's just something that child will be able to work through for sure. And it's not a reason for you to not take that day off. And finally, myth number 7 is one that you might not actually be telling yourself, but one that you might internally believe. And that I can't take a day off because I don't deserve it. Again, you might not say it in these words, but it might be something that you want to wonder if you're actually internalizing. If you're never taking a day off, then even if you think, oh, I deserve a day off, but you're never doing it, your actions don't show that you believe that, because our actions really do speak louder than our words. So if you aren't taking your day off, if you're sick and you're dragging yourself in, if you're having a really hard time mentally and you have like this huge bank of sick days and you could take a mental health day, but you're not doing that, maybe you don't believe that you deserve it. And maybe that's something to explore. Maybe that's something to talk to a teacher friend about. Like, do I deserve to take a day off? Just something to think about. So now that we busted these myths, have you started your sub plans? If not, check out the link in the show notes for our free sub planning starter kit. Or better yet, if you want us to do all the work for you, we have the best sub plan deal we've ever offered going on right now. You'll get lesson plans for all subjects. We cover pre-K through 6th grades. It is such a good deal. And right now we're still finalizing the details of if we're going to do a deal like where you pick your grade or if we do them all together or whatnot, and what the pricing, and we want to add some juicy bonuses, and we're figuring that out. By the time you're listening to this, you'll have all the details about pricing and bonuses on that page, and I'm recording in advance. So be sure to check out that link for all the details. If you're listening later, we'll include the link for the best deal that we currently have running. We're giving early access to you, and we'll let our email and social media people know later. But since you're listening to the podcast, we're letting you know first. You can save an extra 10% on your purchase with code POD10. And if you want to try before you buy, be sure to check out our free sub planning starter kit for a sample. I've linked to that in the show notes. I've mentioned it a few times, but I wanted to mention it a bit more here because it has sample lessons for every grade level, so you can see what's included in the plans. And all you'll need to really do is find a few other things and add to it, and you'll have that full day of plans where you can bust all these 7 myths. You can take your day off. You can feel good about it, and it'll be ready to go. Your students will still have content aligned to the core and everything. And then it will be easier for you to make that phone call than for you to drag yourself in sick. And that is really my ultimate goal for you. And in that freebie, you'll get those lesson plans. You'll get a PowerPoint with some forms for like essential information your sub will want to know. You'll get thank you cards. You'll get punch cards. You'll get our free ebook called The Sub Planning Made Simple, where I'll walk you through everything else you need to do in written format so you can get everything else you need ready to go. So whether or not you decide to make a purchase or not, this freebie is going to help you to have those sub plans ready so you can hit that easy button and you can make sure that your sub plans are ready to go. They're also a great way to see if you like it before deciding to purchase our ready to go sub plans. But I bet you'll like it, just like these teachers. Let me share what a few of them have had to say. So Patty said, why it took me so long to switch to this system is beyond me. The last couple of years I had a classroom position. I'm an intervention teacher, so now no more classroom. I love not having to spend all that time making sub plans. I loved leaving the generic plan and letting the sub grab things out of the sub tub to do. Lindsay says, I feel very confident in leaving this in the hands of my students and sub when the day comes I can't get sub plans around. There's so much within each set that you could easily double the number of days to use these for. Well thought out, easy to understand, fun activities and differentiation so you can level within your class. Love that you have a separate Google slide for the teacher and students. So glad I purchased these and don't have to fret about planning for a sub day. Thank you. Thank you. Jessie said, I used these this year. Total lifesaver when my dog needed emergency surgery. Subs love the plans. Students love the lessons. Totally worth it. So take Jessie and Patty and Lindsay's word for it. These sub plans have helped over 70,000 teachers in their classrooms. So don't forget to head to the link in the show notes. Use code POD10 to save an extra 10% off. Next week, I'm going to be sharing all about St. Patrick's Day teaching ideas. So stay tuned, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I will talk to you then. If you're enjoying this podcast, be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you're ready to take the next step with me, then you are going to love Wife Teacher Mommy Club. Our top-selling resources for pre-K through 6th grades have been used and loved by tens of thousands of teachers. And the club gives you one-click access to all of them to meet the needs of every child you teach while saving tons of time. Plus, you'll have our certified life coach in your back pocket with several monthly workshops and an Ask a Coach portal you can use 24/7. The combo of resources and coaching is our secret sauce to your best teacher life. Think of my team and I as your personal team, doing the lesson planning for you and on the sidelines coaching you and cheering you on as you focus on what you do best, impacting the children you teach. Plus, if you're loving this podcast, you'll also have access to our private podcast just for members, where I continue the conversation with all of our guests with members-only bonus episodes. And don't forget the club with VIP access to Educate and Rejuvenate, our summer conference, and our private Facebook community full of like-minded educators supporting each other. You do so much for everyone else, so it's time to invest in yourself. Your teacher friends' jaws will drop when they see just how quickly you finish your planning. Not to mention the glow of the happier, more fulfilled you. Head on over to wifeteachermommyclub.com to learn more.